Is it time? It's time. It's time for another episode of Life Stories Unscripted podcast. Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Viviane, and I'm a professional and certified doula, breastfeeding and newborn care specialist, and I talk about everything related to preconception, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and beyond. So if you're a parent or you're trying to be one, this is definitely the podcast for you. So make sure to stay tuned or tune in. If you have watched some of my previous episodes and you like them, I would greatly appreciate it if you would hit the subscribe button and help me spread the word and awareness together. Today's episode is about fear and how fear relates to birth and what to do about it. So make sure to stay tuned. It's a really good one. We also have a recurring guest today. So if you have watched one of my previous episodes with her, you know what's in it for you. But if you haven't, I would strongly recommend to go and watch one because it's worth watching and worth your time. Without any further ado, her name is Zuzana Svepešová. She is a dating/relationship coach and a psychologist. And like I said, together we will tap on fear and fear related to pregnancy and birth. Last but not least, this episode is sponsored by Perfecta Placenta in Beverly Hills, which is placenta preserving company. So if you would like your miracle organ to be preserved after birth, make sure to use my promo code Doula Viviane as you get 2 amazing gifts in the form of a stretch mark cream and a diaper bag. For more information, you can send me a message and I would be very happy to talk more about this with you. But let's talk about fear. Hi, Zuzi. Thank you for being here.
Hello, Viviane. Thank you for having me again. It's pleasure. It's a pleasure, and I'm very excited to dive into our topic today.
Me too. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you very much. Still dealing with the heat wave, so but it's lovely to have you here as your listeners and people who are watching. England is known for showers, and for the rain, so having sunshine is lovely, so we're all enjoying it. Even though I'm busy today, I'm spending most of my time indoors, but still it's nice to have sunshine and warmth, so enjoying that. Thank you.
Amazing. So today we're tapping into fear and how fear relates to pregnancy and birth and what to do about it. So before we do that, before we get to the very end of it, what to do and how it actually relates to birth, how about we just start in the beginning and you telling us what fear is, because I know a lot of people, including myself, have this, I would say, misconception about fear, and that fear works against us, that fear is something bad, that when we feel fear or we are fearful, it is actually signaling us something very, very bad, and we try to get rid of it as soon as possible, or we even shut it out, ignore it until it reaches a point where we can't ignore it anymore, and it can be very, very overwhelming. So I would love to just talk about what fear is from you as a specialist.
Mm-hmm. I think this is a great start, right? Before we go into solutions, I think we tapped into it in the last episode that when you know what you're actually dealing with, then you know what approaches to choose, right? So identifying what fear actually is a great way to start, I think. Yeah. So, okay. So what fear is, right? So it's actually a natural and very powerful primitive human emotion, right? So it's actually a biochemical reaction of your body, and it's like a signal letting you know that you're exposed to some kind of a danger or harm, right? And this danger can be either psychological or physical. Yeah. So in a nutshell, this is what it is. But I think what the key word is that it's natural, right? Because sometimes we feel like, okay, it's not, I shouldn't be feeling this way. We blame ourselves for feeling the fear, that we should be more courageous, that we shouldn't be feeling that way, right? And that in itself is actually not helping us to deal with it. So yeah, it's a natural reaction. It's a signal of your body. And I think that's the fundamental change, perhaps, from going, I shouldn't be feeling this, something is wrong with me, to this is my body or my mind trying to tell me. So going from that, like, okay, something is wrong with me, to why is this emotion here, right? Whether it's fear or any other emotions, but today we're talking about fear. So it's natural.
All natural, bio, eco.
That's it. Perfect. Yeah. We're going with the trend.
Right, absolutely. So when you say it's natural, I'm pretty sure that there are some triggers to make us feel fear, right? And I'm pretty sure that everyone has different triggers. And some triggers are stronger, obviously, during pregnancy, because you, as a future mom and already a mom, because you're carrying a baby in your belly, are feeling fearful whether the baby is going to be okay, whether you'll be able to have enough milk or provide for the baby emotionally. So being available emotionally for him. But my question is, because we talked about attachment last episode and how different attachment styles can create a different capacity for us to love ourselves, but also others, and be emotionally available to other people. So my question is that, can fear be tightly correlated, or can it be in one pot with the attachment that we have? So if attachment style A is something, can we be more fearful because of this?
That's a great question. And I think, so the short answer is yes, they are definitely connected and they correlate. And more elaborate question is that basically, as we talked about different attachment styles, there are 4 basic ones, just to remind to your listeners and viewers, if they haven't perhaps watched the previous episode, just to 4 of them. It's a secure attachment style, anxious, avoidant, and fearful or dismissive attachment style. Each of them, they are described differently, but secure attachment style, as the name suggests, means that you have a secure attachment to your parent or primary carer, and you feel secure within yourself. Whereas the remaining 3 mean that you have more like an insecure bond with your primary carer, but also with yourself. So that's where the fear comes in, and where all this is connected, going back to the childhood. And this is for moms to be, new moms, right? Because it's us as moms who are giving all these patterns and habits, and perhaps if we have any fears, we're likely to pass it on if we don't manage it ourselves. But also what we can do to help our child to become secure rather than anxious, avoidant, or fearful, right? So where the fear comes in is that one of the main things when it comes to attachment style is consistency, right? So a consistency of love, care, and protection provided for the child. So whether you're a mom to be, whether you're already an adult, or whether you are about to bring a little child into the world, I guess both of these will be relevant. So it's about the consistency. As an adult, you can think about, were my parents consistent in providing love and care for me, or did I only feel loved when I was doing good at school, and when I wasn't doing good at school, I wasn't, they let me know that I'm like, I should be better, more competitive, and so on and on. Just one of many, many examples, right? And when you're about to have a child, for example, how can I be consistent with love and care I'm providing to my child? Because if the consistency is not there, we feel like consistency creates a sense of security, right? I can rely on this. It creates a habit or pattern, and everything what's consistent feels familiar, right? So, but also depending on whether we create familiar chaos, so to speak, or familiar security, that's where the different level of fear follows, right? In general, people who had a lot of love when they were growing up, there is much less fear as they're older, right? So if they have enough attention from their parents, but it's also non-judgmental. The child feels like they are safe to come back, that they are not going to be judged, and that they are okay. It doesn't matter what they do, even if they make a mistake, you know, or if they cry, that the parent is not going to dismiss the emotion. Then they know that they are safe. They are not fearful, right? But if we feel like okay, it's not consistent, then you're fearful, right? But I think another element of that is that familiarity, right? What's familiar to you? And in general, fear kicks in when we're entering unfamiliar territory, right? So for example, moms to be, you're going into birth, pregnancy, it's new, especially if you're a first-time mom.
Right.
You don't know what's going to happen, and every single body is different, every single woman is different, right? Every single pregnancy is different, every single baby is different, so we don't know, right? And suddenly there are so many things that are just out of your control, or you're just discovering about yourself, right? So another huge element of fear, and when fear appears, whether your attachment style is being created when you're little or during pregnancy, and after that, after birth, is element of unknown, so to speak, or things not being familiar to you.
So we can say that the amount of love that you receive equals to the fear that you experience when you're an adult.
Yes, but however, there is a disclaimer which I think is very important. That's why I like to elaborate on things and make them very clear, because sometimes we can objectively say this. However, one very, very, very important thing to point out here is how one defines love, right? Okay, so because so yes, if you receive a lot of love, care, and attention, you're less likely to have be fearful, right? However, for some parents, love meant, okay, I provide you with material things, you have clothing, you have food, and that's it, right? I love you. But for them, it's love, right? However, emotional support will be lacking. So let's say you're 6 years old and you're starting school. Well, in my country, when you're six, roughly six, right? That's where you start school. It's a very new environment, right? So let's say you may be fearful. Are your parents there to help you navigate these emotions? You're entering new social environment, right? So, and if, for example, if they say like, oh, don't worry, don't be scared, you know, don't cry, it's nothing to worry about, right? Rather than really listening to you. So there are different definitions of love, right? And it may be worth for parents and for each of us to check in with ourselves. What did we learn love is or was when we were growing up, right? But I think that's another new like well of things. But I think that's an important disclaimer to say here.
That's so, yes. And I know that we tapped on this in the previous episode, but I fully agree with you, because I think too, this just brings us to another level. To describe or know where fear comes from, we have to be able to define and know where our love and understanding and meaning of love comes from, right?
Yeah.
it's mind-blowing how it all connects, how love and fear are just, like twins in the same pot. They just operate a little bit differently, but essentially they have the same mother, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. Absolutely. And yeah, it's all connected. Like we can't, when we look at fear, it's not, yes, we may be dealing with fear, but we need to look at what's the opposite, what we want instead, right? So it helps us to get that direction and focus rather than just, yes, it's important to acknowledge that fear and but then, okay, where do I want to be instead, so I can start doing something about it, right? So yeah, absolutely, they're connected 100%.
Okay. Well, as you were talking, this thing came to my mind, that let's say we have a securely attached person who knows what love is, who knows what fear is, and they're not afraid of it to feel it. They know what to do with it. They know how to navigate through it and how to cope, essentially. But then what if we have a person who is insecurely attached and who all of a sudden fears something, which is not essentially fear in itself, but it's a body's reaction to something. I guess you just said it, to something unfamiliar. What can be done in such a scenario? Because I feel like this comes up a lot with pregnant women who, because they don't know, because they didn't have the access to all the information or the support that they needed back then or wanted even themselves, but they just, for some reason, either financial or social or geographical, for that means, for those means, couldn't access that type of support and information. They become fearful. What can be done about this? Because it can harm them and the baby, right? In the long term, if we're always fearful, then also stress kicks in, and stress is a bit different, I would say, than fear, and has a little bit of a different effect on us rather than fear.
Absolutely. Again, like you mentioned, these two are connected, right? Like if you're more fearful, going simply back to the body, right? Pregnant mom, hormones change, then you sleep less when the baby is born, and so all these things, emotions affect how your body, like your immune system, basically. So yeah, it's so now back to how to deal with it. Okay, so there are so many ways. So one of the things is that one of the major reasons why fear and also anxiety kicks in is when we focus on things that we can't control. Yeah, so for example, a woman gets pregnant or is about to give birth, and there are lots of elements which you can't control, right? And we don't know how things are going to be after birth. And so the questions like, what if I can't manage? What if this happens? What if that happens, right? And we feel the fear. But when you actually look at what you're focusing on, so it's about the focus. Where is my focus? You discover that you're focusing on primarily on things you can't control, or things you don't know. And no one knows everything. And if everyone does, great. Let me know who that is. I would love to meet that person. But we discover that we are focusing heavily on things we can't control. We're questioning those things. So one of the fastest ways to go back to feeling resourceful and feeling like you can do things, like you are kind of in control, like something can be done, is literally ask yourself, what can I do right now? But really giving yourself space and time to think about it. your mind will probably go, well, you can't do anything, right?
I mean, that's what you think and feel when you're just fearful, full of fear, like, oh my gosh, like, what can I do with, well, I don't know, like,
yeah, exactly. But that's still like, that's why it's and let's say if you say like, okay, I can't do anything about, let's say, my hormones and what they're doing to me, right? The next question is, then who can help me? Who can I speak to that can help me? For example, experts like yourselves, who can help me to take me through this time and explain to me what's actually happening, right? Because sometimes what happens is that there's so many fantastic books and YouTube videos and podcasts, and however, what can happen that we can feel overwhelmed by all this information, and one person says this, another person says that, and suddenly we're like, whoa, I don't know what to do, right? So first thing is like, sorry,
I was just saying, on top of that, on top of all these resources, we receive information that we don't necessarily need or is not necessarily helpful in our case, but can also be biased, right? We don't know, is this supported? Is this clinically supported?
That's it.
So I think that's where the professionals come in. They know what to look out for. They know which fish is bad, essentially, in the pond. Take it out and just give you the fresh fish, or fresh fruit, whatever you take as an example, and tell you this is what you can work with. This is truly supported. This is unbiased. This is not non-judgmental. So just on top of what you were saying, I just wanted to add this little disclaimer, like you said earlier.
No, I think you just made a really, really great point, because we often ask for advice from people who don't actually have, like, results we would like to achieve to start with, right? But it's natural, right? We're looking for support. You may find yourself looking for support, looking or asking your family, your friends, like, what shall I do, right? But what you just said was that some people, and family and friends, are often biased, which is natural, right? And they often offer you advice which comes through their filters, kind of like from what they value, what's important for them, right?
What experienced.
Absolutely. So then speaking to a professional and getting often tailor-made help and support for yourself, because like we already discussed, it's every person is very different, every pregnancy is very different, every birth is very different. So that's where professionals come in, right? But I think the first thing is like, what can I do, right? But obviously this is a logical approach, right? And as you mentioned, for those of you who will be watching, you'll see, like, you went like, oh, I don't know what to do, right? Literally, we sometimes feel like this. We just walk around, run around like headless chicken, and like, I don't know what to do. So this is a logical approach, asking yourself, but sometimes your brain is just, when it's tunnel visioned, and when it's in fear, it is tunnel visioned. Often you may not know what to do. So you can approach it from a different perspective, and that is your body, right? So you're not going into logical thinking, but you approach it from a way of mindfulness, right? And what's happening in your body. So when you're fearful, literally noticing, okay, so where is this fear in my body, right? Am I having knot in my stomach? Am I having heavy shoulders? What's happening, right? Am I breathing faster because I can't focus? Something is imminent. What's happening, right? And literally taking a few deep breaths. There is a fantastic technique. There are lots of techniques. But for example, a very simple technique, which will help you to calm down your nervous system. But when you do that, when you calm down physically, then your tunnel suddenly becomes wider. So you can think about what you can actually do, right? So when you find yourself not knowing what to do and you're very like, no, I can't focus, go through the body, right? So simple breathing technique, like starting, for example, with 3 breaths in, deep breaths in, and 4 exhales, right? And then the next one is 4 deep breaths in and 5 exhales. And then you go higher, right? 5 inhales, 6 exhales, and go higher. Obviously, you don't want to go like super once you feel
25.
uncomfortable. Yes, if you can do that, fantastic, right? So just giving yourself that space, right, will make a huge difference, because you're calming down your nervous system. Your fear, it's basically it's that, like I already mentioned at the beginning, it's a chemical reaction. It's not just a pure thought in your mind. There is actually something chemically happening in your body, which then causes your breath to get faster. It causes you to tense your muscles. So notice, for example, are you holding your shoulders up, right? What happens? Okay, I'm holding them up. So just release them and see what happens, right? So it's mindfulness. I think mindfulness is another way how to approach this.
It's essentially when you're talking about the chemical reaction and that your breath gets usually faster and your muscles tense up and you notice like your shoulders, you're just in a spasms of some sorts. It's almost as if your body is preparing to either flight, freeze, faint, or there's one more. Flight, fight, faint,
Freeze.
Yes.
Freeze.
So,
yeah. Absolutely. And this is very natural, because again, back to like a definition of fear, right? It's your body's preparation to deal with a danger and harm, but the thing is that danger can be, sometimes it can be real, but sometimes it's perceived, right? So there may be lots of things we can do in that situation, but because we are at that moment, we are very focused on all those things we can't do,
right,
we feel helpless, we feel unresourceful, right? So it's either going through the body or really asking yourself, like, what can I do? Who can help me? What do I already have that can help me, right? Rather than what do I not have? What am I missing? What do I still need to do? What I haven't done, right? There are always lots of things we can do, right? But in order to get back into kind of like control and having a sense of choice, then it brings you back to yourself, really.
So there's this question that I want to ask very badly.
Go ahead.
You tapped on victim mentality last time, and we didn't really go into that, but it just poses the question in my mind that when you are being fearful, you're experiencing this chemical reaction in your body, and you are trying to go through your mind and then through your body, but you always end up at the same ending, which is essentially, I can't do anything. I am, there is no one and nothing that can help me. Can this be linked to a person having this victim mentality because of the attachment?
Yes, absolutely. There is something, again, they're linked, right? There is something which is called a person who's got victim mentality. There is something, what they learn is something called learned helplessness, right? So, and this can often come again from parents, right? So, for example, either mom to be or now as we are moms who are bringing up their children, right? You may be doing everything for your child, or your parents did everything for you, right? And I'm not sure whether we touched on it on a previous episode, but we briefly talked about helicopter parent, right? And that's a parent who is always looking out for the danger of their child, as much as the intention of the parent is to protect their child. And here is where that definition of love comes in, right? Like I'm protecting my child, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in excessive
Yes.
forms,
In excessive
a
ways.
parent is doing, or perhaps for those adults who are watching and listening to this, what happened when your parent was like this, they actually caused you to be fearful, and they taught you to think in what can go wrong all the time, right? And they often spoke in terms of why you can't do things, why things are not possible, right? And don't even bother, right? And perhaps they were blaming, or now you may find yourself blaming external circumstances for who you are, where you are, right? So that's where that victim mentality, victim mindset is created, right? And what we basically learn is that I'm not in control of anything. Nothing is my responsibility. That's another key word. So I can't do anything about, like if I want to have a painless birth, I can't do anything. This is just how it is, right?
Yeah.
So I can't do I'm not responsible for this. It's my hormones, and it's the staff in the hospital, right? It's the baby, it's my husband, it's my partner, it's the weather, right? So often I think what's important to point out that this can often be learned, and it often is learned mentality, that we learn to be a victim, right? And then we look for people who are rescuers, so to speak, right? We look for someone subconsciously often who offers that help for us. And I can't do it.
That would be the helicopter parent, right? In this case.
Yes.
The rescuer.
Yes, absolutely. So that's what's being created right there is something called drama triangle, right? And this is a concept, I wish I came up with it because it's so brilliant, but it's not my concept. So it's something that comes from transactional analysis. And that's basically every time you find yourself in any kind of quote marks drama, any kind of imbalance, challenges in any relationships, whether it's you and your child, you and your partner, you're most likely part of a drama triangle, right? So for example, here, when you have someone with victim mentality, who is basically, it's like mentality of poor me, I can't do anything, you subconsciously look for people who will rescue you. And that person is called a rescuer, right? But the rescuer also was probably brought up 9 out of 10 or 9.8 out of 10. These people are brought up in a way that they're often people pleasers. I'll save the world. I'll save you. These are people who, for example, yes?
So they themselves suffer from some sort of their own drama triangle, right? So it's like a chain reaction of just triangles, right?
Yes, it's all like as long as you're in that triangle, you're in that triangle, right? You have to step outside of it, and for each of obviously there's the third part, there is a persecutor, but each of these people, that doesn't mean that it's only some person with a victim mentality, a victim, so to speak, that's, something is not quite working for them. It's also the rescuer who lacks boundaries and is people pleasing and finds it difficult to say no, or the persecutor who always tends to find what's wrong with the world, with their partner, with their child, right? So there is the unhealthy approach towards how things should be done, and that keeps that triangle alive, unless you pause and you become aware of it, and then you consciously step outside of it, and there are ways how to do that. But absolutely. And then fear, like we already said, because if you are heavily focusing on what you can't do, then you're helpless. So it's that learned helplessness, right? So in a victim mentality. But it's also a fear for the rescuer. They dread to say no to people. They learn that in order to be loved, they need to please others, right? So there is the different kind of fear that is happening for them. And then you have a persecutor, right? I have to have everything in control, so I'm just pointing out what's wrong, whilst there is a huge insecurity, fear of being rejected, right? So all these fears are alive. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes, it makes perfect sense. Thank you. Yes, but another question, is there a healthy no drama triangle?
Yes, there is. So this is where the things can start shifting. So when you, first of all, I think we've talked about it in the previous episode, where you want to first stop and actually acknowledge that, okay, something is not working, and then explore or see what it is. So once you discover, like, okay, I'm part of drama triangle, something is not working, or you may not even know about the concept, but basically you recognize the pattern, then
right?
Sorry?
It's the awareness that
Yes.
it starts with, right? And we're back at the very beginning of the other episode, that we just have to open our eyes and try to see.
Absolutely. That's the first thing, because it's acknowledging. I'm fearful. I feel helpless. It's pure acknowledging, because unless we suppress it, we can't really deal with it. So that's the first point. So how to go from drama triangle to a different triangle, which is called the winner triangle, right? So what we can do is that I guess I can speak about each, just briefly about each position, what you need to do in order to transition from drama to winner triangle. So when it comes to victim, the main challenge for them is lack of responsibility, right? And they are blaming everyone else or external circumstances, and taking zero accountability because they were not told, or it's just that's not what they are doing. So one of the first thing what they need to do, if you find yourself that you're in a victim mentality, is to look at what is your part in the process, what is your responsibility in the process, okay? And ask yourself, what can I do? Because unless we open ourselves like, okay, this is my part, I know it's not sunny today, but what can I do to regulate my emotions, right? So,
and that's also linked to the fear, right? When we acknowledge that, okay, I might be a victim in this, I might have this victim mentality, and I'm fearful, but it's not real fear. It's something that just feels familiar, and this is my natural reaction to it, because this is what I have been taught, this is what I saw, this is just what I'm mirroring, right? That there can be something done about that, right?
absolutely. It's about, as I said, first of all, it's checking with yourself what you can and can't control. Absolutely. So obviously triangle, it's got three parts. So drama triangle has got victim, rescuer, and persecutor in it. So I'll just go one by one and what you can shift it into and how, just to one tip. So when it comes to victim, so what you can do, obviously, when you're victim, you're focusing on what you can't do, what, like, that you're not responsible for anything. for the most part because you probably learned it, you know. And so what you want to do is to explore how you can become a creator of your experience. So, and you can do that simply by asking yourself, what is my responsibility here? What can I do? Right. And because habitually your brain has been, or you've learned to actually go like nothing, you know, it's always like nothing. But obviously this is for those people who are serious and ready to shift things. So I think it requires a certain level of curiosity, right? To go into, okay, what's happening? How can I change this? So this is the way how you can change it. What can I do? What's my responsibility? Because, and then this puts you into a driving seat, right? So you can start focusing on things that can make you resourceful, right? So for example, okay, maybe you can't really do much about your hormones, right? Because they will just do whatever they need to do when you're a mom to be, or, you know, you just during birth, after birth, and all these things. But what can I do? There are different mindfulness practices. What can I do? Can I speak to a professional? Can I speak to you or my GP? Who can help me? So by that way, you are consciously taking steps and you're becoming the creator of that experience. And that immediately takes you from this empowered place to empowered place. Then you have a rescuer. And that's the person who takes a lot of responsibility, more responsibility than it's theirs, usually for victims' responsibility, right? And that's a person who finds it difficult to say no, they people please. So you can shift to winners, a triangle, or to be a winner, to feel more empowered when you become more of a coach for the other person, right? What that means is that you can facilitate change, but you're not really giving them advice in terms of, this is what I think and this is what you should do, right? But rather offer space for exploration for the other person and learn and teach them to question perhaps their own beliefs, right? Help them to perhaps create a safe space for them to explore and do it themselves. Because if you're a rescuer and you're doing things for the victim, what you're actually doing, you may be thinking, oh, I'm helping everyone, I'm saving the other person, right? But what you're actually doing, you're enabling that person to take no responsibility. So that's actually harmful. It's not helpful, right? But becoming a coach is much more helpful and efficient. And then we have persecutor, who's the person who tends to find faults in other people's behaviors, in their own behaviors, in what's happening around the world, right? So to shift that, you want to become a challenger, right? So you challenge yourself, but you're also curious about, okay, so you can perhaps praise the people. You can notice what's also going well, rather than just heavily focusing on why things are not working, where everyone needs to be better all the time, right? You can challenge that. You can offer space for improvement, but be that facilitator, right? So yeah, and I guess one of the techniques which I perhaps can share with this, because sometimes it may be quite challenging to realize all these, like, okay, where am I? You know, am I
the victim? Am I the persecutor? Am I who am I? I don't know.
Yes,
I can't help myself, and back to victim, right?
Yes. So I think one of the very, very simple, quick technique how you can kind of give yourself space is something called SOS, which is very like, I would say, suitable for like when you don't know what you're doing. And that stands for stop, observe, shift. Okay. So because this drama triangle, if you've been a victim or rescuer or persecutor for a while, this is on autopilot. So you can't really notice it. It's happening. It's in full swing unless you stop. So what you want is to do stop. If you can, you want to stop. You want to take a few deep breaths. You want to do 5 minutes of journaling, something that helps you stop, right? Then you want to observe. Here, I think I mentioned it in a previous episode, you want to be curious rather than judgmental, right? So I'm observing, okay, so what's happening? Like we already discussed, where is this emotion in my body? Where is this fear in my body, right? Or what am I telling myself? What am I focusing on? And just observe, right? And then you can in that space you can choose, okay, so what needs to be different? What can I do? And then shift it, right? If you find that you're fearful and you feel like nothing, you can't do anything, and you may be like, okay, I think I'm having a pity party, like I say sometimes to myself, right? I'm in a victim mentality. I'm like, okay, so this is unresourceful for myself, right? But really speak to yourself in a non-judgmental way. So what can I do? How can I become a creator, right? What can I do to create rather than just be helpless, right? So yeah, so stop, observe, and shift. that's nice and quick technique how to deal with the fear.
And
I
it's
would
easy
say.
to remember too.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. And so, okay, so to wrap this up, how do you have some tips or some questions that a person can ask themselves in a situation like this when they feel fearful to but I guess you just said it, to observe, right? But are there some specific questions they can ask themselves to know, I might need to reach out to a professional about this because I might be a victim here, I might be a persecutor, or I might be a rescuer. But I don't really know what to do with that information next. I don't really know how to be a creator, how to be a coach. I don't know the steps from A to B.
Well, here is where the person has a choice, right? And you have, I would say, 3 choices. No, there are many choices, but one choice is to do nothing, right? And you can continue with the same cycle. You know, some people choose that, and it's like, as we previously discussed, this is, some people wrap it up in, this is just who I am. That's it. Then you have a choice of speaking to your friends and family. But when it comes to this, as much as they're often loving and they really, really, really want to help you, what is a disadvantage of that? Not in all cases, but often, that people from your surroundings who are not professionals offer subjective opinion on what's happening for you. And because we're all different and you have different needs, your friend can be mom to be as well, but because her body is different, her values are different when it comes to taking care of herself, taking care of the child, what kind of birth she's going to have, right? Your opinions will differ. So also your family, right? So what kind of advice you receive can be very subjective. It may not be helpful at all. You might find yourself either deviating from what's right for you, so and then also perhaps being resentful, because then you go like, well, that didn't work, right? So and then you can reach out, and obviously there are lots of books and resources out there, but as we already discussed, that can cause a lot of confusion, right? Because there are lots of different approaches, opinions. So even though you have a professional opinion, they differ, right? So from my personal experience, and when I was going through something I was fearful about, or when I needed a space that was safe and non-judgmental, and what I would recommend to those who are really looking, who are serious about changing that, managing their fear, and doing it in a resourceful, a helpful way, for not just for themselves, but also for their child and generations to come, because this is far-reaching, is, I would say, the best way is to speak to a professional who can create that safe space for you, and offer and not to offer, they will not offer unsolicited advice, and their opinion will be objective. And because also some of the things we don't want to discuss with our family, right? So the professional will create that space for you, plus they will provide a tailored support for you, right? And here, what I would say, talking about tailored support, is, and what I always encourage my clients to do, and I can imagine you do that too, that you can speak to a few people and just see who you resonate with, because I've seen it times and times again, and people just go with a professional because it says that that professional can do X, Y, Z. However, what I would truly encourage everyone who wants to make an impact for themselves and transform things, to speak to a few people and see who resonates with you, because there are professionals who offer one size fits all approach, which I personally am not a fan of at all. And I've seen it many, many times with my clients, that came to me, and they were talking about exactly about this experience. But different approaches work for different people. But part of this is also encouraging you as a person, whoever is listening, to really trust yourself and make this choice for yourself, see as a way of taking care of yourself. I'm choosing someone I feel good about, right? So hence why I spoke about tailor-made approach, because I know that's I do that in my practice, and I'm a huge fan, and I know that you do that as well. So I think, so I'm vibing a lot for that kind of approach, because we're all unique, even though there are some very universal things we have to cover. You have to cover with every mom. There are also then the specific things that come up for each person. So yes,
I agree. I absolutely agree. And I would just say that for the professionals to be able to create a tailor-made plan is also the ability for them to listen effectively. Because some people, especially family members and friends, they want the best for you. They want you to essentially be safe. That's what they're going to do. And they don't really need to listen for that, right? They just know, they just hear you're doing something that they didn't do, that they don't know how it would work for them, but this is what they did. This is what worked for them. So this is what they're going to tell you, no matter what you're saying or what you actually need. And I think this is the huge benefit of working with a professional, whether it's a coach or a psychologist or a doula or a midwife or a postpartum doula. It does not matter, because they are trained in this and they know how to listen. And I think it starts and ends with that, to listen and just not say anything sometimes, because that's another thing. Do you want me to help you, or do you just want me to listen? So I would just say that on top of that, on what you said, and I absolutely agree with what you said. So these, I think, are amazing, very valuable, priceless tips and insight and knowledge that you share with us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. And I'm so glad that I hope we managed to bring a slightly different perspective, or very different perspective, on fear and what it means for us, and bring it from the place of perhaps feeling that something is wrong with you, to the place of feeling empowered, and that fear is just there. Fear is there for you, to give you a message. It's there for you to tell you something. I guess there's one more thing, is last thing maybe I would like to say. I heard it recently, and it really, really resonated with me. And that was that in a way how to deal with not just fear but any emotion. I guess particularly with negative, like not negative, unhelpful emotions, we feel that they are not helpful for us. Is that imagine the emotions are children, right? So how would you deal with children? So when the fear comes up, how do you deal with a child, right? Do you push it away? Or do you become inquisitive and you're curious? Okay, tell me more. What's going on? And you listen, right?
Right. And it's, you don't push it away. You don't work against it. You work with it. You work to find a solution together. So instead of looking at fear as this persecutor, we can look at fear as a team player, as someone who came to help us essentially to figure out something, right? It's
absolutely
wonderfully put. Wonderful.
Yeah, because you have that energy. Yeah, you wake up in the morning and you have that energy, so you can either use it to really worry and think about all these horrible things, or you can use it to create, right? Okay, how can I co-create with this fear, with this emotion, right? So yeah.
Oh, I loved it. And I'm pretty sure there's going to be more of this with you. But tell us, for the listeners and viewers who did not check my last episode with you, where can they reach you and whether you have a website?
Sure. So they can reach me in few places, but 3 places. The best places to see perhaps my content. I post regularly on Facebook and on LinkedIn daily from Monday to Friday. So the listeners and those who are watching, they can check me on there under my name, Zuzana Svepešová. And I also have a website, www.zuzanasvepešová.com. And if they want to book a call with me, there is a button through there, but they also can contact me via Facebook Messenger or messages on LinkedIn, and we go from there. I think I mentioned it on a previous episode, but for those of the listeners and watchers who haven't seen it, it's the first call is for us to get to know each other, and it's like I already mentioned, choosing someone who really resonates with you. That's the space where we would just get to know each other and see, first of all, whether we feel like we're a good fit, and then we would go from there. So it's no string attached call. It's just for us to see that we're happy to go forward and deal with the fear or whatever is the burning challenge.
Wonderful. And I can vouch for that myself. If you're watching or listening, make sure to check Zuzana's website. She has amazing content every day, and just from her content, I feel so much smarter every day. So it's really worth your time. So go check her out. You won't regret it.
Thank you, Vivi. Thank you for your kind words, and thank you for having me once again. I think it's been wonderful, and
Absolutely.
it feels such an amazing topic. Yes.
What they say, third time's the charm. So we have to see each other at least one more time.
I think there is so much to talk about. I think, but it's just about choosing the topic which I think we have so much to choose from. So I'm sure we'll find something. Yes, so I can't wait already. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. And I think all the topics that we discussed are very much overdue. They're not talked about, or at least from what I heard and seen. So I'm really happy we could bring this new perspective. We could bring this little, coffee table talk to people and make it a little bit more available. So I hope if someone can find at least one information here that would help them, that makes me very, very happy and accomplished at the end of the day.
I agree with you. And I think things we are talking about here, starting with attachment style and how to manage not just fear, but all these emotions that may come up when you're a mom or mom to be, or in your relationships with your partner and bringing up your children, but in any area of your life really, is so impactful, because this is not going to change just your life if you really go on this quest, and if you're committed to transform things for you, but this is for generations to come. This is for your children, this is for their children, right? But then it's also impacting your community, your family, you're inspiring others, right? But it all starts with you. So I think it's just so wonderful and great that we can spread this awareness. So yeah, love it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I will see you next time. As with every episode, we have come to an end. I really hope you enjoyed it. I did myself. If you did, please hit the subscribe button to help me spread and share the word together. If you or someone you know have a unique birth story or some insight into the perinatal period that you would like to share on my podcast, please let me know via Facebook, LinkedIn, where you can find me under my name, Viviane Shima, or via my email address, birthwithviviane@gmail.com. Thank you, everyone. That's it for me. I will see you next time. Bye.